Hello, and welcome to the DoneJS Contributors Meeting. Today is Friday, September 1st, 2017. My name is Chasen Lahara, coming to you from Long Beach, California. And today we've got some core and non-core team members. Guys, want to introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Matthew Phillips. I live in Kentucky, and I actually like writing documentation.
You're one
I
of
said that with a straight face.
Hi, I'm Kevin Phillips, no relation. I am representing all of Chicago today. I'm the only Chicago person. I don't live in the city. I like that Matthew likes writing documentation.
James, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm James. I currently live on the northwest side of Illinois, and I love regular expressions.
Ooh, thankfully for the rest of the team.
And hi, I'm Bradley Marmager. I live in the heart of the Commonwealth, Worcester, Massachusetts, and this is my first DoneJS Contributors meeting in a while as a Core OS developer. So happy to be back.
Yeah, good to see you. How are your feelings on docs and regular expressions? I
am very pro regular expression. They can sometimes be annoying, but they're also sometimes fun to parse. In fact, I found a bug in regular expressions that we had just this week, which I probably won't be talking about, but it did exist.
Cool. All right, let's go through statuses. We'll talk about what we accomplished this past week and what we're going to be working on this next week. I'll go ahead and start. So this last week, I have been writing a mini series of articles for CSS tricks. So I've been working on those, and then we've triaged a bunch of CanJS issues and PRs this week. So I helped a little bit with that, and also the CanJS 3.10 release, which we'll talk about later. And then last week we talked about a community survey that we're gonna get going in the next month or so. So I've started doing some prep work for that. Next week, today is the first of the month, which means it's going to be a community update blog post time. So I'm going to work on that today to publish on Tuesday. And then finishing up all of the other stuff that I've got going on with the survey, and I've got another React blog post and what have you. So that's me. Kevin, you want to go?
Sure. Yeah. So this week, early in the week, we were fervently trying to get CanJS 3.10 out. That's released now. And then I spent some more time this week working on an issue that's in CanView Live related to node lists. A few different people have reported this, and we've seen it on a couple different projects. So hopefully we'll get a fix out for that today. And then next week, we're working on CanJS 3.10.1, which has we'll hopefully have that CanView Live fix. It also has some interesting stuff that James worked on for supporting dots inside of bracket expressions in Stash, which is interesting, but people want it for some reason. And then a lot of updated warnings and docs. So hopefully those will be helpful for people.
Awesome. Sounds good. Matthew.
Hi, I've been working on documenting Steel Bundle Manifest. Should I show that now, or should I wait until after?
Let's do it after statuses.
Okay. Yeah, I've been working on different documentation for Steel Bundle Manifest, and I'll be showing that here in a minute. I'm going to write an article about HTTP2 support in DoneJS, the various things that we've had in the recent months. That's when I start an article on that. So that's what we'll be working on next week.
Cool. Sounds good. And usually we just go through statuses for the core team members, but James and Brad, if you guys have anything that you wanted to talk about or show off, you're more than welcome to.
Thanks. I think Kevin covered all of ours. I'm sorry, all of mine. Don't know about James's, but I've just been working on getting 3.10.1 ready for production this week, which is a lot of the warnings that Kevin mentioned and a few other miscellaneous issues, including getting pre-release dependencies out of our packages.
Awesome.
I just fixed a Steel URL parsing problem where if there was an @ sign in the URL, it was incorrectly parsing that URL. So I fixed that problem. I think that's an important one to note.
Yes, the issue there was that someone had an npm package that used the source of the bug was that someone had an npm package that used what do you call it? Where you have the add symbol in your package name.
Oh, are they scoped
packages?
Scope packages. Yeah, they were importing something from a scope, like a private repository, and it didn't work. And like importing a less file actually was pretty interesting. So James, thanks for fixing that.
Cool. Sounds good. Let's go to topics then. Matthew, let's start with you. You had the Steel bundle manifest.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Let me do that. So I created 2 guides, and I also want to talk a little bit of some things I'm thinking about changing on the Steel website. But first, just so you know, there's a new production section on StealJS.com, and I'm going to start adding production stuff here. But I have 2 guides that just released. One is called Server Templating in Node, and what that means is how to use Steel and the files generated by Steel to do like server templating. So this guide goes through taking our example app MyHub, which is a pretty widely used example app throughout our documentation. It takes this, it adds Steel bundle manifest, and it creates a little Express server. So you start off with a very bare bones Express server, and then the goal is to make it so that when you load the puppies page or the weathers page, that you get just the JavaScript that you need for that particular page. So it goes through the whole process. We create a little template, a little, what do you call these? The backtick, kind of a template using backtick strings, and using bundle manifest to know exactly which scripts and which styles to add. And it takes you through doing that. And so yeah, when you build this app, you get kind of, when you're on the puppies page, you get the scripts, which will load asynchronously because that's how it works now, and then to send out just that HTML. So this is the kind of thing you'll do if you're using optimized builds. So there's that example, and then it also kind of shows you how to do it if you're using like handlebars or some other templating language, which you often are doing if you're doing server templating. But yeah, if you see here, let me see if I can zoom in. When you do this, you get these link headers, and these link headers will tell the browser to go ahead and start fetching these resources. So before the browser is even like rendered a single pixel on the screen, before it's done anything with the HTML, it's going to grab these link headers and it's going to start fetching them. And you see how it says here as script, that says to process this as script. So it's going to like get it completely ready to be executed. But it won't actually execute it until it encounters a script tag. The same thing for styles. So this aids in performance a great deal. And if you happen to be setting like in front of behind a H2 server, then these will be pushed as well.
That's really slick.
Yeah, that's a cool one. And then another one. So I lost my place. This one's really if you're a Node.js user, right? Then I also have one to generate HTML snippets. So now if your backend is not in Node, then obviously you can't use Steel bundle manifest in that way. But what you can do is you can create little snippets of HTML like this, and then you can kind of just inject those into your server templating. So this goes through, a very typical thing you do with Steel builds, which is to say that you run the build process, which that returns a promise. Let me see if I can find the actual example. When you run Steel Tools Optimize, it returns a promise, and then you run another script after that. So this script just creates these little, like I said, like these little HTML snippets, saves them to a file. And when you're done, you get a few files, and you can just inject them. I had to look up how to do this in PHP, so hopefully this is correct. I think it is. But this is an example of doing this in PHP. You could just include those snippets for your page. So it should be easy enough to use no matter what backend application you're using. So it's the same idea, is that you get just the styles in JavaScript for that particular page. Cool. So yeah, there's these two new guides. Please check them out. I also wanted to briefly mention that I'm really really starting to think that I need to restructure the guides or the documentation on Steel. What I want to kind of do is start, this kind of things are, it made sense at the time, but just because as we've added more and more documentation, I think it needs to be grouped differently. So I kind of want to group these things by subject rather than just having like guides and topics. Like, what is a guide and a topic? Are those really different things? They're kind of are, but they're really not. So I kind of want to have maybe have a group of things on using Babel and different subjects related to that. A section on configuration, because there's definitely a lot of things you can configure. A section on maybe split these off into their own section on bundle manifest. So just have more groupings based off of like use cases rather than topics and guides, and which are not really it's kind of you have to really read these titles to like understand what it's actually about. So I just kind of want to do a better job of grouping these guides, and I plan on writing more of these in the future.
That's awesome.
So yeah, that is what I've been doing.
Cool. Anyone have any questions or comments for Matthew? Nope. Cool. Thanks, Matthew. Kevin, do you want to talk about, you posted a few topics, so you want to start with 3.10 and then go from there?
Sure. Yeah. Let me share my screen. All right. You guys see my screen? Cool. So yeah, 3.10 had a ton of stuff in it. A lot of this stuff is things that we've demoed before during these meetings, but just to go through them real quick, the biggest new thing I think that's going to affect most people is the new binding syntax. So you can see, if you want to see all the docs, you can go to this link, and there's tons of new docs for all these new binding syntaxes, and then the legacy syntaxes if you need to find those. And this also mentions a code mod, which I'll go through in a little bit. Some other stuff named inline partials that James talked about and presented is really awesome. The debugger helper and stash that Chris presented a few weeks ago is in there too. And then this white space control and stash is the other big addition. And then you can see the entire list of minor updates. So we had a dozen different minor releases in this CanJS minor release. Got a few new packages, a few that are really exciting. Can Element is now part of CanJS. I know that's something that Matthew's really excited about and I think is really cool. Can Kefir that Justin presented maybe last week or 2 weeks ago. Can Observe, which is a way of making observables using proxies that I think Matthew also created and presented a long time ago, like I don't know, 6-8 months ago. And then you can see all of the other bug fixes and documentation improvements. It's just a ton of stuff in Can 3.10.
Can I briefly talk about Can Observe just real quick, just for people that weren't around last time? What Can Observe does is it allows you to create objects where they can be observed even though you don't know the properties in advance. So you think about like a can define map. You define all the properties that exist on that map, and then it's observable from that point on. But this doesn't require you to like predefine properties. So if you just want to have more of a less of an object-oriented style, I would say. You just want to have like an object that you can just like add stuff to, and it'll be observable in templates. Now this requires a feature of JavaScript called proxies, and proxies are only available in modern browsers. I think they're available in all the modern browsers, but you won't be able to hit IE 11 or in any version of IE with this. But if you're only supporting modern browsers, it's kind of cool, I think, for like small components that don't need all of the decoration that's required for like defined maps. Okay, that's it. That's my pitch.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for explaining that. Yeah, so it's available on everything except IE. So even on mobile, Android, and Safari, that all works there. So that's cool. All right. So yeah, the other thing I wanted to demo is what is mentioned up here. This code mod. So if you go to this link, you can see. Actually, I have it open already. I think. No, I don't. If you go to this link, you can see this is the CanMigrate project, which has all these code mods that you can use. A lot of them are related to upgrading from CanJS 2 to CanJS 3, but there are some that we're starting to add now for new things like this. So if you take a look at this docs, it shows you exactly how to use this new code mod for updating to the colon binding. So I'm just going to show how to do that real quick. So this is the DoneJS like place my order app. So I'll run this CanMigrate, I use the A flag that says to actually apply the transformation, and then I give it this glob pattern to say, you know, update any JavaScript, Markdown, HTML, stash, or component files. And then I give it the transform that I want to use, which is the colon bindings transform. So if you run this, you can see it does a bunch of stuff, and then you can look at the status, and we see it updated some stash files and some component files. And we can look at the diff of these, and you can see that it's updating all of the old binding syntaxes to the new binding syntaxes. And it's using the kind of explicit forms of the new bindings. So if we go back to these docs, you see in each of these docs, we have kind of two different formats. So there's the simplest format that we're going to use in most cases that's going to try to infer whether or not you're trying to bind on the view model or the element directly. And then there's these more explicit forms that tell it exactly what to bind on. So in this case, if you do on L, it's going to bind on the element, and then on VM, it's going to bind on the view model. So by default, this code mod will use the explicit forms, so the VM and L bindings. And that's just because it's a little bit safer for us to do it that way. We know it's going to do the right thing all the time. But what you can do, if I reset this back, you can pass a flag that basically means to use the implicit forms. Name, but that's what it is. So now if we look at these, you can see that it's not using VM or L anymore. It's just using the simplest form of the bindings. Cool. So that's how to use it. Just want to take a look at what the code mod is actually doing. So going back to James's love of regular expressions, he did a lot of this code, a lot of these regular expressions. You can see there's just a ton of them that are. I do not love regular expressions. It would take me a while to tell you what this is doing. But yeah, you can see all this stuff it's doing. And so here in place my order, we only really have stash and component files, but the code mod will actually do a lot more than that. So it will modify stash like that, and if you have a stash call in JavaScript, it will actually look for where you're calling stash and transform whatever you're passing to that. In HTML files, it will look for any scripts that are typed text stash, and it will also look for your, and it will transform this as stash, and it will also look for your Steal script tag and treat whatever's inside of there as JavaScript. So it will basically look for this. We do this a lot in kind of demo pages and things like that, where we have stash in other places. It will also update component files, so it will look for stash inside of a view or a template tag, and then it'll treat that as stash, and then it'll look for a view model or a script type equals view model and treat those as JavaScript. So it'll just transform these sections. And then in Markdown, it actually, if you take a look at this, in Markdown, it will look for backticks for HTML and treat those as stash, and it'll look for backticks with JS and treat those as JavaScript. So we'll just transform these. So it actually does a ton of different stuff and tries to find all the places you're using stash. So hopefully we've covered all of the cases there.
That is amazing.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So cool. Try it out in your projects. If you find anything that either didn't get transformed or doesn't work correctly, please let us know.
So wait, it finds the string inside of the JavaScript.
Yeah. Yeah. Inside of a place where you're calling stash.
Okay.
Because otherwise, well, we didn't have that originally, and it would kind of treat like any function calls like this as possible bindings. So it was kind of treating this as the beginning of an event binding, and then it was looking for the first like closing tag and like transforming this. So yeah, so we had to make it really specific.
But it's able to
I had
handle-
to ask James to make it really specific because I actually.
It's able to handle like the string concatenation and stuff, though, right? Like that you're concatenating a string there.
Yeah.
There could potentially be problems if there's like a lot of them, but it seems to work when in this scenario here. But
Yeah. So we have tests for all of these. So all of these files that I'm showing you are actually like the input files for the tests that we have. So like that input.component file actually, we run the transform on that and make sure that it gets turned correctly into this output.component file. And if we use the implicit flag, this other one that has the implicit bindings. So yeah, we have tests around all these cases that I've shown. Hopefully that's all of them. But yeah, if you're doing something crazy, it might not work exactly correctly. For instance, like if you don't call stash, that probably would screw it up. I don't know if we've tried like template literals. I don't know, James, if you tried that case.
Yeah, template literals, single quotes and double quotes will all work. If you like try to do some JavaScript inside of there, like accessing an object, it'll break that.
Yeah.
So
okay.
inside your stash call, if you did like a string plus some JavaScript that accesses an object or a function, yeah, then that would screw it up. But most of the time, it's something like this, and it should be fine.
Yeah. So hopefully, it's covered all the cases that people are doing. So, but if you run into others, let us know, and we'll hopefully try to help you.
Yeah. Question: do we have an issue open for running the code mod on all of the guides within CanJS?
All of the guides within CanJS are done. I did that last week before the release. We do have an issue open for running it against DoneJS. So like the DoneJS guides and the couple of DoneJS projects that we have, like placement order and the chat guide, or the chat app. But yeah, CanJS, if you see anywhere in the CanJS docs that have the old syntaxes, let us know, because there are a few. Justin found one that's in like can util dom adder or something that was so we didn't update each of the individual projects because hopefully most of them aren't really using stash bindings, but if you do see some, let us know, we can run it on those.
Cool, sounds great.
Cool, so that's 3.10. Do I want to talk about my other topics?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, cool. So I just have a couple quick topics. The first one isn't really a topic. I don't really have anything to present or talk about. It's really more of like a request for ideas. So we started thinking about how to support JSX more directly or natively, I don't know what you want to call it, in CanJS. So if people like JSX and you want to use it with CanJS, let us know how you want to do it. We're starting to think about that, and that's probably an initiative we'll take up sometime in the near future, is having support for JSX, either with Can components or with the new Can element, or we'll see. Depends what people want.
Yeah, if there isn't an issue open already, would you mind creating one, and then I'll link to it from the summary.
Yeah, so
cool.
We've kind of avoided opening an issue so far, just because we don't really have our ideas put together yet, and opening an issue like that will probably get a lot of I don't know, bike shedding and people giving different random ideas. I can open one, but I'm kind of hesitant to do that.
Okay. Should we ask for people to like talk to us in Gitter, or open like forum posts, or how do you, if someone has an opinion, how do you want them to share it?
Kevin wants opinions, but he doesn't want there to be any record of the opinions having been placed.
Opinions, yeah, but I don't want.
Send Snapchats of your opinions on JSX.
That's a good idea. I don't know. What do you guys think? Did you think a forum post, or?
I think you just need to sit down and come up with an idea, Kevin.
Yeah. So we kind of have an idea.
I think what you want essentially is you just want you just want a function that returns JSX, right? it takes an object, which is probably a component, and it returns some JSX. Right?
I don't know. What do you mean? It takes an object. What takes a component?
Well, yeah, because usually when you use JSX, is you have some type of input, you have some data. Like in React, it would be the component itself, and you know, the properties off of that object, and you return a JSX, which is some type of VDOM representation, right? So it returns some VDOM. So that's the use.
Yeah, so you mean like takes the state, not like the when you said component. Yeah, I understand what you mean.
Well, so an object, it could depend where it comes from, but the API to me is a function that takes an object, and that's your state, right? And yeah, and then the internals is going to call that function whenever it needs to.
Yeah. So maybe what I'm really looking for is like what people like about JSX compared to the stash. So maybe that's the place we should start. Is I'll open a forum post looking for what people like about JSX compared to what we have now. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So I'll do that, and then we can link to it. All right. The other topic that I wanted to talk about is something we're going to fix hopefully more immediately than JSX. So this issue that you opened like almost a year ago, Matthew, about fixing dynamic imports. So I've put I think someone's going to start working on this probably next week, and I've put kind of what I think we should do, and I wanted to see if anyone has any huge objections to this before we start on it. So my idea, so a lot of people run into this problem where they do something like this and they don't realize that it's dynamic or it's an async import. So what I'm proposing is that I guess what we talked about before is we add a new tag called async import or dynamic import. We can like shed on the name, but I think CanAsync import is good, that you can use for these dynamic imports. And basically you can use it either way, either with like a self-closing tag or with a closing tag. So what I'm proposing is we add that, and then we deprecate using the old can import for dynamic imports, and we update all of our docs and guides to use the new one.
So I know we talked about this in a previous contributors meeting too. What were the other alternatives that we talked about?
So the thing that Matthew originally proposed was adding an attribute to the existing can import in order to say that it's dynamic. And then what did we talk about last time? Oh, the other thing we talked about is making, if we have can imports that have a closing tag like this but don't have any content in them, then we should make these into static imports. So like this second thing would basically get converted to the first thing.
Say that again? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so if there's no content inside of this, there's nothing between these two characters, then it would
to me that's like fixing the symptoms and not the disease. It's because people accidentally do that and they expect it to be synchronous or static. They expect it to be static. So I think I do think it should be explicit somehow. I kind of prefer an attribute. I don't know why. I don't know. I guess I don't care too strongly.
You prefer an attribute over a separate tag?
Yeah, just because, I don't know, it's doing the same thing, really. I mean, it's doing the same thing. It's just whether it's like pre-parsed.
Yeah, I just think an attribute is less explicit than a different tag. I think people will be more likely to realize this is different.
I agree with that too.
Okay.
So would we deprecate using can import with content? once can async import was available?
Yes.
Okay.
I think we would deprecate using can import without like a self-closing tag. So if you ever had a closing tag, we would warn on that and say to use can async import instead.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Anyone else have any thoughts on this? All right.
Cool. If you do, if anyone that's watching has thoughts, it's can view import issue number 9. We'll probably start work on it sometime next week or the week after.
Cool. Was that it for topics that you had, Kevin?
Yeah.
Cool. Did anyone, I know Julian mentioned the thread that he opened about the YouTube contributors meeting. Did anyone else have any other topics that they wanted to go over? Nope. Cool. Then to address what Julian posted, he opened up, I think it was a forum thread about renaming the contributors meeting videos to include the topics. At first, I was hesitant because I didn't want to create more work for myself, and I've always felt like being able to search in the forums was an easy enough way to find the topics that we had talked about. But I realized that that doesn't cover searching on YouTube, and we, like, if our videos were more searchable on YouTube, that could be helpful. So I'm gonna start putting in, like, for today's meeting, it might be the meeting name and then CanJS 3.10 binding syntax code mods JSX can import, and just kind of throw those keywords into the titles. Sound good? Sure.
Sounds good to me. Yeah. Don't like force yourself to go back and do every week's, you know.
Oh yeah, that's not going to happen.
Going forward, it'd be good.
Yeah, going forward, not going to go back through the archive of every week's video. Cool. Anyone have anything before we go? Nope. All right. Everyone who's watching on YouTube, either the live stream or the recorded video afterwards, thanks for watching, and see you guys next week. Bye.